I'm Maria, and I've always been the odd one out in my family. From the moment I was born, I felt like a disappointment to my dad. He had really wanted a boy, and when the doctor said, "It's a girl," I could see the disappointment on his face. That pretty much set the tone for our relationship. My older sister, Olivia, was the star of the family. She was smart, talented, and could do no wrong in my parents' eyes. Meanwhile, I was just there. Our home was always filled with praise for Olivia's latest achievements. Did you hear? Olivia got another A on her math test, or look at the beautiful painting Olivia made. My report cards barely got a reaction, and my crayon drawings often ended up in the trash. As I got older, I learned to take care of myself. I made my own lunches, did my own laundry, and figured out my homework alone. It wasn't great, but it made me independent and strong. One day, when I was about 14, something happened that changed my life. I was hungry after school, and since no one was around to make me a snack, I decided to try baking cookies. I followed a recipe from one of Mom's old cookbooks, and, to my surprise, they turned out pretty good. The next day, I took some to school, and my classmate Deborah tried one. Her eyes widened, and she said, "Maria, these are amazing. Did your mom make them?" I smiled and said, "No, I did." Word spread quickly, and soon, kids were asking if I could bring more. For the first time in my life, I felt special. I had found something I was good at, something that made people notice me. When I got home that day, I was excited and told my parents, "Mom, Dad, guess what? I made cookies, and everyone at school loved them." Mom barely looked up from her magazine and said, "That's nice, dear. Just make sure you clean up the kitchen." Dad frowned and said, "Cookies, Maria? You should focus on your studies, not wasting time in the kitchen." My heart sank, but I didn't let their reaction take away my excitement. I had found my passion, and I wasn't going to let anyone stop me. As time went on, the gap between Olivia and me grew bigger. Olivia graduated high school with top grades and got accepted into a prestigious college. You would have thought our parents had won the lottery, the way they celebrated. Meanwhile, I was still in high school, with decent but unremarkable grades. But I had found my thing, baking. Every weekend, I baked cakes, pies, and cookies. Soon, even the neighbors started placing orders. I had a small business going. One day, Mrs. Frank from next door took a bite of my chocolate cake and said, "Maria, honey, this is amazing. You have a real talent." I smiled, feeling proud. "Thanks. I'm thinking about going to culinary school after I graduate," I told her. Her eyes lit up. "Oh, that's wonderful. You do great." But when I shared this dream with my parents, their reactions were totally different. My mom's face dropped. "Culinary school? But that's just cooking." My dad's reaction was even worse. He slammed his fist on the table. "Absolutely not. No daughter of mine is going to waste her life in a kitchen." "But Dad," I argued, "I'm good at it. People love my baking." He scoffed. "Good? So what? You think you can make a living flipping burgers or decorating cakes? Wake up, Maria. The real world doesn't work like that." Mom added softly, but just as dismissively, "Honey, you need to think about your future. Look at Olivia. She's studying finance. She'll have a real career." Their words hurt, but I wasn't ready to give up. I started selling my baked goods at school events and to classmates. The response was amazing. "Maria, these cookies are incredible," my friend Larry said with his mouth full of chocolate chip cookie. "You should open a bakery or something." I smiled, picturing it. My own little shop filled with the smell of fresh bread and pastries. It felt like a dream. But at home, that dream quickly turned into a nightmare. One day, Dad found a flyer for my bake sale. "What's this?" he demanded. I swallowed nervously. "It's for school. We're raising money for new computers." He glared at me. "Don't lie to me, Maria. I know you've been selling your treats. This stops now. You need to focus on real studies, not this hobby." "But Dad, I'm making good money," I said. "Money?" he snapped. "You call a few dollars for cookies money? Do you know how much your sister makes at her internship? That's real money. That's a real future." I bit my lip, trying not to cry. "I just thought." He cut me off. "No, you didn't think. Listen carefully. This baking nonsense ends now. You're going to get your grades up and apply to real colleges. If I hear about one more cake or cookie, we'll cut you off. No more college fund, no more support. Got it. That night, I cried myself to sleep. My dream of culinary school crumbled like an overcooked cookie. The next day, I started researching business colleges, my heart heavy but determined. Somehow, someday, I'd find a way to follow my passion. But for now, I had to play by their rules. College passed by in a blur of numbers, spreadsheets, and financial reports. I focused hard on my accounting studies, trying to convince myself it was the right choice. But every time I passed a bakery or smelled fresh bread, my heart ached for the dream I left behind. After I got my degree, I landed a job at a big company and my parents were so happy. I rented a small apartment, determined to live on my own. But as I sat at my desk day after day, doing numbers and reports, I felt myself slowly fading inside. One evening, I couldn't take it anymore. I pulled out my old recipe book, its pages worn and stained from happier times. I decided to bake a batch of cupcakes, losing myself in the process of mixing and baking. The next day, I brought them to work, and the response was immediate. "Oh my God, Maria, these are amazing," my coworker Brenda said. "Where did you buy them?" I hesitated and then said, "Actually, I made them." Word spread quickly, and soon people were asking if I could make cakes for their birthdays, kids' parties, and even weddings. I started small, just doing a few orders on the weekends, but soon I was spending all my free time in the kitchen. My little apartment was always filled with the smell of vanilla and chocolate. The big moment came when my company's anniversary was approaching. The director came up to me and said, "Maria, I hear you're quite the baker. How would you feel about making the cake for our anniversary party?" My heart raced. This was a huge chance and also a big risk, but I couldn't say no. On the day of the party, I brought in a huge cake decorated with the company's logo and detailed sugar flowers. When I unveiled it, the room went quiet. Then the director grinned and said, "This is incredible. Everyone, give it up for Maria, our accounting wizard, and, apparently, master pastry chef." The room filled with applause. The director even hugged me and whispered, "You're wasted in accounting, Maria. This is your true calling." His words stuck with me. As more cake orders came in, I realized I had a choice to make. I was working 3 full-time jobs, accountant by day, baker by night. Something had to give. One sleepless night, covered in flour and surrounded by cake orders, I made my decision. The next day, I handed in my resignation. My supervisor was shocked. "But why?" "You're one of our best," she said. I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in years. "I found my true passion," I replied simply. I rented a small commercial kitchen and threw myself into my new business. It was both scary and exciting at the same time. There were nights I stayed up all night filling orders, and days when I questioned if I had made a huge mistake. But little by little, my bakery started to grow. I hired my first employee, then my second. We moved to a bigger space, and soon my cakes and pastries became well known across the city. Through it all, I kept it a secret from my parents. As far as they knew, I was still a successful accountant climbing the corporate ladder. I kept telling myself I was waiting for the right time to tell them the truth, but deep down, I was just scared. Scared of their disappointment, anger, and rejection. As my bakery business grew, I realized I needed to step up. I jumped into modern marketing, determined to make my shop stand out. I created social media pages for the bakery and posted photos of my creations every day. But I was careful not to show myself. No selfies, no pictures of me as the baker, just the cakes, cookies, and pastries. Despite my fears, the business took off. I partnered with a local delivery service to reach more customers around the city. I started a loyalty program, offering discounts to returning customers. Then came my big idea, Sweet Tooth Saturdays. Once a month, we opened our doors and offered free samples to anyone who stopped by. The first time, I was so nervous. What if no one comes? I worried to my employee, Emma. She rolled her eyes and said, "Boss, have you tasted your own stuff? People will be lining up around the block." She was right. By noon, there was a long line down the street. Seeing people's faces light up after tasting my treats filled me with a joy that had nothing to do with the ovens. Our popularity skyrocketed. Soon, we were catering high-profile events, supplying desserts to fancy restaurants, and even shipping our signature cookies across the country. With success came money, more money than I ever thought I'd make, especially just from baking cookies, as my dad once said. Before I knew it, I was earning more than my sister's bank salary. I started helping my parents financially, still pretending it was all for my accounting job. When their roof needed fixing, I paid for it. When they talked about wanting to visit Europe, I surprised them with tickets. "Oh, Maria, you shouldn't have," Mom said, but her eyes sparkled with excitement. While I was building my business and helping our parents, Olivia was living her best life. She still lived at home and spent her entire paycheck on designer clothes, fancy gadgets, and her obsession with self-care. But none of that mattered to my parents. To them, Olivia was still the star. "Did you hear about Olivia's promotion?" Mom would say, beaming. Vice president of her department at only 30. I'd force a smile and say, "That's great, Olivia. Congrats." Meanwhile, I was running a successful bakery, employing a dozen people and making hundreds of customers happy every day. But in our house, that didn't seem to count for anything. One day at Sweet Dreams Bakery, things started like any other. I was in the kitchen putting the finishing touches on a wedding cake when Emma burst in, waving an order form. "Boss, you're not going to believe this," she said, eyes wide. I wiped my hands on my apron and asked, "What's up?" "We just got an order for a birthday cake. The delivery address is..." She paused dramatically. "Your parents' house." It felt like I had been hit with cold water. "Are you sure?" I asked. She nodded and handed me the form. There it was, in black and white, my childhood address, my mom's name, and even a note saying it was for her birthday. I couldn't breathe for a moment, but then a plan started to form in my mind. "Emma," I said, my voice calm even though my heart was racing. "Clear my schedule. This cake is going to be my masterpiece." For the next week, I put everything I had into that cake. 3 tiers of Mom's favorite flavors, decorated with hand-piped flowers and delicate sugar sculptures. It was the best cake I had ever made. As I worked, I imagined the scene. My parents' amazement when they saw the cake, their pride when I told them I made it, and the joy of finally showing them who I really was. The day of the party came. I arrived early with a small gift to keep up the act. The house was full of relatives I hadn't seen in years. "Maria?" Aunt Anna said, hugging me. "Look at you, all grown up." Still crunching numbers. I nodded, the usual lie catching in my throat. "Yep, still at it." I couldn't wait for my cake to arrive from the bakery. Then the doorbell rang. Mom answered, and there was our delivery guy, holding the familiar Sweet Dreams bakery box. "Special delivery for the birthday girl," he said cheerfully. The room went quiet as Mom carried the box to the dining room table. She lifted the lid, and everyone gasped. There were murmurs of appreciation as they took in the cake in all its glory. I stood there, heart racing, waiting for the right moment to speak. But before I could say anything, Dad cleared his throat. "Before we celebrate," he said, his voice serious, "there's something we need to address." The room went silent, and everyone turned to my parents. Their faces were filled with what looked like disgust. "We recently discovered something," Mom said, her voice cold. "A secret that's been kept from us." The tension in the room was unbearable. I felt frozen as my father spoke again, his voice full of anger. "Can you believe it?" he said, looking around the room, pointing at me. "Our Maria has been lying to us all this time. She's not an accountant. She's a pastry chef." He said the words like they were the worst thing in the world. I tried to speak, to explain myself, but no words came out. This couldn't be happening. Dad's face was red with anger. "We always dreamed our daughters would find real success, become respected members of society." He pointed to Olivia. "Like your sister, vice president at her age. That's something to be proud of." Olivia looked uncomfortable and avoided my eyes. "But you," Mom said, staring right at me, "we gave you everything, every chance, and this is how you repay us? By becoming an ordinary cook." The word ordinary hurt more than I could have imagined. Didn't they see what I had built? Didn't they understand? Suddenly, Dad walked over to the table where my cake sat. In one quick move, he flipped the box over. I watched in shock as my beautiful cake, the masterpiece I had worked so hard on, crashed to the floor, a mess of icing and sponge. The guests gasped. "We're not eating this," Dad said with a sneer. "It's beneath us." Mom nodded in agreement. "Maria, you've shown us you don't belong with respectable people. You've disobeyed us for the last time." Dad's next words felt like a punch. "We disown you. You're no longer our daughter." I couldn't breathe. This couldn't be real. I looked around the room, hoping someone would stand up for me, but everyone avoided my gaze. Even Aunt Anna, who had hugged me earlier, now whispered to Uncle Adam. I always knew she was trouble. Others nodded, agreeing with her. The room, which had been full of celebration moments ago, now felt cold and hostile. "Leave," Mom said, her voice like ice. "Leave now, and don't ever contact us again." I stood there, frozen, tears streaming down my face. How could they do this? How could they dismiss everything I had accomplished and everything I was? It felt so cruel. "Didn't you hear your mother?" Dad barked. "Get out." Somehow, I found the strength to move. I turned and walked toward the door, my vision blurred by tears. As I reached for the handle, I heard Olivia's voice, soft and unsure. "Mom, Dad, maybe we should," but her words were cut off as the door closed behind me. I stumbled down the front steps, the same steps I had climbed so many times as a kid, but now they felt strange and unwelcoming. I made it to my car, and that's when the sobs hit me. Sitting there, surrounded by the pieces of the family I had just lost, something inside me broke. The dream I had held onto for so long, that my parents would finally accept and understand me, had shattered, just like my cake on their dining room floor. I don't know how long I sat there crying, but by the time the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the neighborhood I grew up in, I knew one thing for sure: I could never come back here again. The days after that birthday party passed in a blur. I moved like a ghost, barely eating, hardly sleeping. The bakery kept running, thanks to my amazing staff, but I was just going through the motions. Slowly, as the shock faded, I threw myself into my work with a new energy. If my family couldn't appreciate my passion, I'd show the world how great an ordinary cook could be. The bakery flourished. We expanded to a second location, then a third. Magazine features, TV spots, and even a cookbook deal followed. Success came in waves, and I rode each one with determination. I bought a beautiful apartment, my own little haven in the city. 3 years after the fallout with my family, I met Tyler. He was kind, supportive, and thought my cakes were the best thing ever. When he proposed a year later, I said yes, without hesitation. Our wedding was small but perfect. As I looked around at the smiling faces of my friends and the family I had chosen, I realized I didn't miss my blood relatives at all. These people, my employees, my friends, my husband, were my real family now. Life settled into a happy routine. The bakery continued to thrive, and Tyler and I built a wonderful life together. I had everything I ever wanted, except maybe closure. That changed on a Friday afternoon, for years after that fateful birthday party. I was in my office, looking over plans for our new bakery location when my phone rang. The number wasn't one I recognized, but something made me pick it up. "Hello," I said. "Maria," came my mother's voice, unsure but clear. "Please don't hang up. We need to talk." What followed was a flood of information. The bank where Olivia worked had lost its license, there had been massive layoffs, and Olivia had been out of work for months. They needed help. Before I could fully take it in, I heard my father's voice cut in. "You need to give Olivia a job at your bakery as the director. Olivia has real business experience. She should run things, and you can just be one of the bakers." The absurdity of it all hit me. After 4 years of silence, this was why they were reaching out? A cold laugh escaped me. "Let me get this straight," I said. "You disowned me, threw me out, and now you're asking me to give up my business to Olivia?" "We gave you life," my dad shouted. "We raised you. You owe us." Something inside me snapped. All the pain and anger I had held back for years came rushing out. "I owe you nothing," I said, my voice calm but firm. "You made your choice 4 years ago. I'm not your daughter, remember? I'm just an ordinary cook beneath you. I won't be helping you, or Olivia. Goodbye." I hung up, my hand shaking slightly. For a moment, I just sat there, letting it all sink in. Then, slowly, a smile crept onto my face. I felt lighter, like a weight I didn't even know I had been carrying was gone. I owed them nothing. I was free. Just when I thought my family saga was over, life surprised me again. One quiet Monday afternoon, my phone rang, showing a number I hadn't seen in years. Olivia's number. Feeling both curious and nervous, I answered. "Hello," I said. "Maria." Olivia's voice was soft and hesitant. "I hope it's okay that I'm calling." I took a deep breath. "It's okay, Olivia. What's going on?" What followed was a conversation that changed everything. Olivia apologized over and over for how her parents had treated me, both recently and 4 years ago. "I had no idea they called you asking for a job," she said, her voice emotional. "I would never have asked for that." "I'm so sorry, Maria." I felt a knot in my chest begin to loosen. "Thank you, Olivia. That means a lot." She went on to explain how losing her job had been a wake-up call. "I realized I'd been living someone else's dream," she said. "Banking, finance, it was never what I wanted. It was always Mom and Dad's vision for me." I listened, barely breathing, as my sister poured her heart out. "Seeing you follow your passion and build this amazing business, it inspired me, Maria," she said. "I've decided to change my life. I've enrolled in interior design courses. I want to create beautiful spaces and be true to myself, like you have." Tears filled my eyes. All these years, I had thought Olivia was the perfect one, living the best life. I never imagined she was struggling too. "That's wonderful, Olivia," I managed to say. "I'm happy for you." There was a pause, and then Olivia's voice came again, full of emotion. "I'm proud of you, Maria. You stood up for yourself, followed your dreams, and now you're living the life you want. That's amazing." I couldn't hold back the tears anymore. Years of pent-up feelings, hurt, anger, and also the longing for my sister, came pouring out. We talked for hours, catching up on lost time, sharing our hopes and fears. As the conversation wound down, Olivia hesitantly suggested, maybe we could meet up sometime, just to talk, support each other. I found myself nodding, even though she couldn't see me. "I'd like that, Olivia. I'd like that a lot." Over the next few months, Olivia and I met regularly. We shared coffee and pastries from my bakery, of course. We laughed about old memories and supported each other through the ups and downs of our careers. Olivia's interior design business was taking off, and I couldn't have been prouder. As for our parents, we heard through the grapevine that they had disowned Olivia too when she quit banking. They told anyone who would listen that their daughters had disappointed them, one a simple cook, the other a frivolous decorator. But Olivia and I knew the truth. We were living our dreams, building successful careers, and doing what we loved. We had found our own paths to happiness. One day, during one of our weekly meetups at my bakery, Olivia looked around at the busy shop and then back at me with a smile. "You know," she said, "I think we turned out pretty great, all things considered." I laughed, feeling warmth in my chest that had nothing to do with the ovens. "Yeah," I agreed. "I think we did." As I watched my sister sketch design ideas on a napkin, surrounded by the sweet smell of pastries and the chatter of happy customers, I felt a deep sense of contentment. This was my life, messy and challenging, but sweet. I had fought for my dreams, lost some battles, but in the end, I had won the war.